Jennifer from Fiberflux. In this video, we're going to learn how to crochet the Sand Dunes wrap. This is a beautiful, drapey, just has a really soft feel wrap that you can wear lots of different ways. And if you hop on the Fiberflux blog using the link down below, you can see all the different ways to style your wrap. We're going to be using a really pretty yarn, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but it has this gradient, so you don't have to do anything yourself. You let all the yarn do the work for you. And this is a granny stripe pattern that we're going to be using today. So we're going to be starting from the bottom point and working our way upward, and it just is a really nice way to display these gradients or variegated yarns that you may have on hand. Now this is also a nice generous wrap. You can wear it as a sort of like a shawlette. You can wear it as an asymmetrical wrap. And the measurements are from, if you measure from the bottom point straight up to this top edge, because it is a large triangle, that is about 34 inches. And from the bottom point up the side of our triangle is going to be about 72 inches. And then if you measure across the top edge of the triangle, where the part where your neck would be when you wrap it around, that is about 75 inches. Now, depending on how much yarn you use, you can really make this as large or small as you want it to be. You simply just work more rows. We're going to be working in, as you can see, in straight across rows. So you simply work more rows, and that will make it not only wider, but taller as well. So you can use the same dimensions and try to get the same dimensions I did, or depending on the yarn that you have, you can really make this a lot bigger or smaller if you wish. So let's get started. For this project, you'll need a pair of scissors, a tapestry needle. We're going to be using a 6mm J crochet hook. As a side note, this is my Furls Odyssey. I'll put the link down below. I always get lots of questions about my hooks, so if you were wondering about that. And the yarn. Now I'm going to be using a yarn called It's a Wrap Rainbow, and I really wanted to have a very wearable kind of neutral palette, but this comes in a lot of really beautiful colors. As you can see, here's an example of one of them here. This is from Red Heart. Each cake of this is 623 yards, 570 meters, and I'm going to be using the colorway called Foggy. This is a super fine 1 on the yarn weight scale, and you may be wondering why I'm using a J hook and super fine yarn. Well, I'm going to be holding these yarn cakes double. I'm going to make a little bit of a, not thick, it's still going to be very drapey, and I'm even going up a hook size for that. But if you want to just use one cake and make it like a fine kind of lighter weight shawl, you can always use the G crochet hook. Let's see, here it is. They recommend the 4mm G crochet hook for this yarn. So if you want to just use one of the yarn cakes, try the G hook and it'll be a little bit lighter, but you may have to work up a few more rows to get the size that you need. But I'm going to be using a J hook, and I'm going to hold these two together to give me a little bit more thickness. It's not going to be thick at all, mind you, but I just wanted it to be a little bit more. Okay, so again, the colorway is Foggy, and you can use either one yarn cake by itself, or you can use them held double, like I will be doing. Okay, so we are going to be using our yarn cake, and the center of it is cream, and we're on a white table. So I grabbed my mat cutter, and I'm going to flip it to the solid color so you can see exactly what I'm doing here. So let's slide our little yarn cakes over. And like I mentioned before, you can hold this double. Now this yarn is thread, basically soft thread, and it's multiple plies. So by holding it double, you're just putting more thread plies, okay? Now whenever I hold yarn double, this is a personal preference, I put a little knot at the bottom just to keep it all together. Once you make a few stitches, it won't matter anymore. Okay. So let's start with our starting chain. What we're going to do is we're going to put a slip knot on our hook. Okay, so let me just zoom in a little bit here so you can see exactly what I'm doing. So what we're going to do is do the slip knot on our hook. Wrap the yarn around your fingers to make a loop, bring the yarn behind the loop, reach in with your hook, bring up a loop, and tighten. Next, we're going to chain 5. So to make a chain, wrap yarn around hook, and bring it through the loop. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, you can see we got a little bit of thickness holding that double, but it's still nice and light. It's a very light, airy feeling yarn. So for row 1, into the 5th chain from the hook, so not this loop here, that does not count. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. We're going to work make the first corner basically. So we're going to work 3 double crochet. So to make a double crochet, wrap yarn around hook, insert it in that 5th chain from the hook. Let's go right in there, bring up a loop, wrap yarn around hook, bring it through the first 2 loops, wrap yarn around hook, bring it through the last 2 loops. Then we're going to work another one. That's 2, and then 3, and then I'm going to get a little bit more yarn off my cake here, and then we're going to work 1 chain and then a double crochet, all in that same chain, that 5th chain from the hook. Okay, so you can see what we have so far. Next, what we're going to do is begin row 2. So this is going to be triangular, and like a lot of shawls that I've made, they go up and out, like a regular granny triangle shawl, like some of the other ones that I have. It actually becomes flipped over time. This we're going to be working in rows, like stripes, okay? Okay, so for row 2, we're going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then turn our work. And then that chain 1 space from the previous row, that first space you come to, we're going to work 3 double crochets right into that space. So 1, 2, and 3, and then chain 1, and then skip over, see that group of 3 double crochets, skip over that, and then in the turning chain space, see down here at the end, we're going to work 3 double crochet, 1, 2, 3, and then chain 1, and then 1 more double crochet into that turning chain space. Just like that, okay? So it doesn't look like a whole lot now, but we do have the beginnings of a little granny triangle. We have our little bottom corner, and you can tell because that's our tail. And then we have some more up here. So let's move on to row 3. Now row 3 is the row that you'll be working for the entire rest of your project, okay? So for row 3, we're going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and turn our work. And then remember that chain 1 space, that first space you come to? We're going to work 3 double crochets into the chain 1 space. 1, 2, and 3. Then we're going to chain 1, and then hop one over to the next space. We're going to skip that next grouping of 3 double crochets, and we're going to work 3 double crochets into that next space. So 1, 2, and 3. Then we're going to chain 1, and then in the corner space, we're going to skip over that next cluster of 3 double crochets, and then that turning chain space, we're going to work 3 double crochet. Gotta get our strands straightened out here. 3 double crochet, 1, 2, 3, then chain 1, and then work a double crochet all in that corner, or that turning chain space rather. Okay, so here is our little triangle so far. It's starting to look a little more triangular. Very cute. Okay, so like I mentioned before, you're going to just repeat row 3 over and over and over again until your shawl it's going to grow in height and width. So when your shawl is as wide and as tall as you'd like it to be, or until you run out of yarn, Now if you're holding your strand single, you can just keep going until you run out of your yarn cake, or you can add a second yarn cake and make it a really big drapey shawl, okay? So what I'm going to do is, let's do one more row together, because each time you make a row, there's going to be spaces added with each row. So let me just show you what I'm talking about. So let's repeat row 3 once more together. Chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and turn. And then in this first space here, we're going to work 3 double crochet. 1, 2, and 3. Then we're going to chain 1. Let me get a little bit more yarn off my yarn cake here. We just did a chain 1, hop over to that next space in between the groups of double crochets. It's a chain 1 space from the previous row. So that was 1, and then 2, and then 3. Chain 1, hop over to the next space, work 3 double crochet, 1, 2, and 3, just like that. Okay, it's starting to look very granny stripish. Okay, so chain 1, and then in that turning chain space at the end of the row, remember we're going to do 3 double crochet, 1, 2, 3, chain 1, and then a double crochet right into that turning chain space, okay? So once again, just keep repeating row 3 over and over and over until your triangle is as long, as wide, as tall as you'd like it to be. So I'm going to continue working my rows. If you need to see row 3 again, simply back up the video and it will be here as long as you need it, and there's even like a slow motion feature. You can slow it down and watch it slower if you need to. So I'm going to keep working my row 3 using my yarn cakes, and we will rejoin in just a bit and finish up our shawl and add some finishing touches to it. Just working that very last stitch of the very last row, and as you can see here, I have just a tiny amount of the yarn left. Now remember, this was 2 cakes, so I just have small amounts, and I can't really complete another row. So I just went until I ran out of yarn, and let's fasten this off, and then I'll show you the whole thing. So what we're going to do is just cut the yarn here, and then fasten off. So wrap yarn around the hook, just bring it through that last loop, and pull to tighten, and just be gentle because it's lots of threads if you're using the same yarn as me. And then what we're going to do is weave in the ends, but I just want to show you first this lovely color transition that we have. It's such a beautiful, subtle gradient. So when we began, at the beginning of this video, we started from the bottom point, and we have this like lovely cream color, and as I worked up, the threads started to change one at a time. So I was holding a group of these kind of silky threads, and slowly but surely some beige or taupe color was added in, and then as I worked my way up, it became more of an all-over beige color. And then as I worked on the top part of the shawl, it started to add, the yarn started to add some subtle gray to it, and by the time I got to the top, it was all gray thread. So it just moves upward in such a beautiful gradient. It's a lovely neutral piece that just goes with anything. I just really love the way this turned out. So the very last thing we have to do is weave in the ends. Now when you're working with multicolors, even though it's subtle and you have this really subtle gradient, you want to make sure, now we won't have that problem here. Now if you notice, when I began, I tied a little knot here to keep the threads from getting all over the place. So we now want to snip that because it'll be easier to weave the ends in. But you want to make sure when you weave your ends in that you stay in the same area. So I don't get any beige until I get way up here, so it's not really a problem down at the bottom. But as we work our way and we do the other tail at the other end, you just want to make sure you stay in the same color area. Now, if you used a different yarn and you have color change sooner than me, you want to be extra mindful of that, because your tail, if you weave it into a different color area, it'll really stand out and not look as nice and neat as you want it to look. Okay, so I just went in one direction with my tapestry needle and came back in the other direction to sort of lock that tail into place. And then just snip and sort of shape it back up. And then let's spin this around. And I only use, well, I used 2 cakes and I held them together. So I only have the 2 tails here. But any tails you have, just go ahead and weave those in. And if you end up making this shawl, definitely share your photos on social media and use the hashtag Fiberflex. And so we can see all the colors that you choose as well. It's so much fun seeing what everybody picks. Everybody has their own creative spin on things, and it's just really fun to see. Okay, so I went and wove this end in as well, staying in that gray area. Now, my gray, because we got wider, the gray part is wider, but it's also narrower. So I only have like 3 rows of the solid, the very most solid part. So I just stayed along that top area here. Okay, so we have all of our ends woven in, and our shawl looks absolutely stunning. This is definitely going to be one of those pieces that I'm going to save for myself and wear all the time. I can't wait to start using it. So that is how you crochet the Sand Dunes wrap. Thanks so much for watching, and be sure and click the subscribe button to get all the latest Fiberflex video updates. Thanks again!